I'd just like to congratulate the bride and groom on their marriage and a lovely ceremony. It was short, which I kind of like and I appreciate. I've been asked to say just a few words about Rebecca. And Rebecca, for those of you who know Rebecca, I'm sure it won't come as any big surprise that, okay, let me see, I have some of her attributes down here. She's always been intelligent, independent, confident, and what's the other one? Oh, strong-willed. In fact, when she was just a little tyke, and she would throw tantrums like any little child would do, I mean, they were just epic. I mean, just absolutely epic. And her mom and I had a little pet name for her, which would go unmentioned. I'll allow her to mention that pet name. But I'll just say, in one of her more stormy episodes, but I couldn't help but think, you know what? There's some innocent, unsuspecting little boy out there right now who's going to wind up with Rebecca. Karen, it was you. Now, we didn't know that he would be so far, across an ocean, but we're very glad that it happened like this. Now, when Rebecca originally came to this country, the plan was that she would spend a year or two here kind of teaching English to the English, and you just can't imagine the mileage I get back in the States when people ask me, well, what's your daughter Rebecca doing? Well, she's in London. Oh, what? She's teaching English to the English. I at least always get a smile, sometimes an outward laughter, and one of my more astute friends says, well, here, he said, the American Revolution is finally complete. so now, when many of you might not know that Rebecca has a brother that's, it's in the education world, of course. And I always knew she would be a very good teacher because what she did, and you have to excuse me for a little bit, because sometimes I get a little emotional when I talk about this, she taught me a lesson on the day of her birth that I will never forget. You see, she has a brother that's 2 years older than Justin, who unfortunately couldn't be with us this evening because of some military duties. But when that little 2-year-old was running around my house, I just could not imagine loving anybody more than that little 2-year-old until I held Rebecca in my arms. and it was like a light bulb had turned on. And my love of her was instantaneous, infinite, and without condition. She stole my heart that day, and she's never relinquished it, and it's just fun. But the thing is that when, as descriptive as the English language is, it's handicapped in some ways because there's only one word for that strong emotional feeling that we have for our family members, sometimes even being our friends, and sometimes even pets and jobs and that sort of business. But when it comes to the love of a man and woman, it's kind of a special type of love, and I've always kind of likened it to a plant. And for a plant to grow healthy and strong and blossom, it needs to be attended to, nurtured, cultivated, and fertilized every once in a while too. So what I like to wish the bride and groom is that your love today continues to grow strong, healthy, and to blossom, and that you always have this love for one another, that you show each other respect and kindness, that you have confidence in one another, and that's my wish for you for the rest of your life. Now, what I want to do is I want to end this, and I'm sure my daughter will get a big kick out of this, with a little poem. And I know you think Dad, poetry, but it's a very short one. It's only 4 lines. I'm not sure if it's iambic pentameter, but
I'll let you know.
You'll let me know. And some of you may have heard this poem before. It's called The Ode to Reality, and it goes something like this. It says, to keep your marriage brimming with love in the loving cup. Whenever you're wrong, admit it. Whenever you're right, shut up. Sage advice. It's not always been my policy, but... So I'd just like to congratulate the two of you. Once again, may you have a very long, happy, prosperous, and healthy life. John, welcome to the family.
Thank you.
Happy travels.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dad. That was lovely. I also wanted to thank a few people individually. First of all, I want to thank everybody for being here today. I'm very happy that you can all be here with us, and I really appreciate those who have travelled from afar and some from closer by. But I'm pleased to have you all in the same room tonight to help us celebrate our newly wedded bliss. And so firstly, I'd really like to thank my mum for all of her love and support in the This has included loads of photos of the animals in her life: cats, dogs, horses, goats, in various places around her house, some hygienic, some not so hygienic. And of course that was always followed by the always appreciated text messages of "Can you Skype between 2 and 3 a.m. most days?" So those were really lovely in the run-up to the wedding. And I'm sure she appreciates the fact that this wedding is the final culmination of her utterly failed attempt to entice John and I back to the States. I've been informed that it's continuing. But this campaign began when John and I first started dating, and it started with the offer of a car. It increased to the offer of a house, and then her final offer, which she thought would be most enticing, was a car, a house, and all the beer that John could drink for a year. And sadly, that still wasn't enough. So I apologise for not accepting those offers. However, rather than holding a grudge for not accepting such generous terms, she's willingly accepted John into the family, and I knew this was the case when, after having seen a rather vague and panic-inducing comment on one of the photos of us together early on in our relationship, in which all her comment was, this then became a very affectionate nickname for my mother, and she's been known as ever since. I'd also like to thank my dad for giving a lovely speech full of endearing terms. But I'd also like to thank him for not taking up his default position as father, where in previous years he may have at first attempted to intimidate or terrify a boy I brought home. So I'm pleased to see that kind of technique has come along. And so Dad and Deb, like my mother, have very graciously accepted John right from the off, and they too had a campaign to entice us back to the States. However, they chose not to go for the beer route, but with wine, and took us on a local tour of the wineries of the region. And while not all of the wine might have been to John and I's taste, the company certainly was. And after that day, I knew that John would get on fantastically well with all of my American family members. And it was great to have Dad and Deb make that an easy acceptance, and to not have to make them say, they love you, really. There's intimidation techniques are a show of affection. So thank you for that. I'd also like to thank Diane for her unfailing generosity, both in terms of making today happen and by always opening her house in Dorset to us for many Dorset trips, and always giving us the best of Dorset living. And art exhibits and more Dorset-based holidays now forever into the future. And I'd also like to thank Katie, my maid of honour in Americanisms, or chief bridesmaids as the UK would say. And I'd like to thank her specifically in that my approach to bridalhood can only be described as rather slapdash. in that every time I talked to Katie about the wedding, it always ended with a, have I told you? Have I told you you were giving a speech? Have I told you that I expect you to be there? Have I told you that I'm camping out on your couch for the next 4 nights? And so on and so forth. So Katie has always been a calming and generous and graceful influence, and she's ever been the best of friends. And so for that, I thank you. And lastly, of course, I'd like to thank John, firstly for not running off, and also for being the absolute love of my life. I knew that John was something special when we went on a sailing holiday, and I knew it wasn't his thing, and I knew it definitely wasn't his thing when he tried to tie sailing knots and it just absolutely failed miserably. But he persisted with good humour because he knew that I was really enjoying myself and therefore didn't want to ruin it for me. And from that moment on, I knew that he was a keeper and I should probably hold on to him. And that good humour has continued through many other, I can only say, sort of failed adventures. So many camping experiences where it's rained every single time. Severe dehydration and sunstroke in Vietnam. And some rather terrifying driving experiences where I was sure we were going to fall off mountains in Slovenia. So through all of these, John has remained very good-humoured and good-natured and has never once told me, I told you this was a bad idea. However, it's not just when we're out adventuring that John is good-humoured and good-natured and kind. In our daily lives together, he is very much the same, and for that I very much appreciate him. So, John, you are my absolute favourite person to go adventuring with, and you're my favourite person in which to do nothing with. So, I would very much like to raise a glass to John and to all of my celebrations.
It's me.
I'm sorry, to you.
Thank you very much. That's a tough one to follow, I have to admit. I'd just like to start by saying thank you to my beautiful bride, Becca, and indeed the entire bridal party here. So the bridesmaids, Tori and maid of honour Katie, look absolutely stunning, so thank you very much. Becca's mother Jane, and also Peter, a wonderful speech, and Deb, great to have you all over from the States, so thank you for being here. I'd love it if you would all join me in raising a glass, raising a toast to the bridal party. Cheers. Yeah, we appreciate you crossing the Atlantic. We have friends here from all over the planet, I think, friends from Southeast Asia. We have friends from Germany, France, Scotland, many from all over the country here, even Tunbridge Wells. That's my boss, an unofficial videographer, Martin, who's scratching that. My wonderful mother Diane, who Becca paid tribute to as well, here as well, who's been incredibly supportive during all of this, all of the planning process. I know we all wish that my father, Tony, was here today as well. He would have absolutely loved Becca. He never met her. He would have absolutely loved her and fully approved of these celebrations. He might have thought this was all a bit poncy, to be honest, but I think besides that, he would have loved it all. And my grandparents as well, Lorna and Alex, who we all miss, but I'm sure would be equally delighted to know that we were all here today celebrating. Now, I first met Becca 6.5 years ago. We were set up on a blind date through mutual friends. We met outside a branch of Starbucks on the Embankment here in London. My first thought on meeting her was, oh God, she's far too good looking for me. This is a girl anyway. Thank you. I thought we were bonding. Anyway, it's a sentiment that has been repeated by a few friends, so-called friends since then. But anyway, That didn't seem to matter. Things progressed well. We went for a wonderful date. We had a drink first of all at the British Film Institute, followed by a slap-up meal at the Oxo Tower, and we were there nattering for about 5 hours, the last to leave. And it remains to this day the most expensive meal I have ever bought. And in fact, she's paid for most since then, so I win. Slightly bizarre second date where Becca suggested going to see a Spanish language film called Beautiful. Now this is a rather miserable film about the lives of African migrants working in a sweatshop in Barcelona. Some of you may have seen it. Death, drug addiction, you name it, it was all in there. It was no Gone with the Wind, suffice to say. And we both emerged from the cinema pretty shell-shocked. We had a quick goodbye, peck on the cheek, and went our separate ways. Anyway, that could have been it, but it wasn't. We had a third date a few days later, which was far more successful. We went to a comedy night, and I think that was when Becca realised that I was as hilariously comical as the guy on the stage, and so that was it. So fast forward to last summer, we were on holiday in Slovenia at a beautiful place called Lake Bled, nestled in the Slovenian Alps. I wanted to propose to Becca whilst we were out there on her 30th birthday. Now, a bit of a spanner in the works, the engagement ring wasn't ready by the time we left for the holiday. Now, I didn't want this great opportunity wasted, so instead I used a piece of string. Now, any of you who have read The Count of Monte Cristo will know what a truly romantic gesture this was. Obviously, I had never read it. But luckily, my bride had, and indeed subtly suggested in advance that this was a way around the problem. Anyway, it turned out rather handy because it meant that instead of proposing by this lovely lake, I could propose in the lake. So, we jumped in for a swim, and shortly afterwards, I awkwardly crouched down on one knee in a shallow bit, fighting to retain my balance, and did indeed manage to pop the question without falling over, or indeed losing the piece of string in the process. So I'm delighted to say she said yes, and after all that effort, I don't think she had any choice. And that brings us to where we are today. So Becca, you are absolutely beautiful. You're looking stunning today, if not more so than when we first met outside that Starbucks all those years ago. And I'm truly delighted to be spending the rest of my life with you. We've had a wonderful 6.5 years together. We've got in just before the 7-year itch, so that's good. And I'm very excited about what the future has to hold for us. Becca, by the way, will be keeping her own name, for some reason deciding that Becca Shaber sounds a little bit more dignified than Becca Bithry. Which, to be honest, saves a fortune on stationery and all the legal stuff, so that's fine with me. What happens now? Well, we have a couple more speeches to come. Katie in a moment, and then my dear friend and best man Joe. Don't listen to him, it's all fake news. After that we'll cut the cake, which by the way my talented new wife baked. So savour every mouthful and do tell her how much you like it. And then we've got the music. So we've got the best of the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, noughties and now, which for those of you like me who work in radio would appreciate. Dancing is compulsory, thanks to the rowdy table on my left here. Dancing is compulsory for at least half the night. If you hear a tune you like, do jump up and join us. If you need anything, please ask. So I mentioned the coffee earlier, do get coffee if you want it. The bar will be kept open all evening, it's all on us. We've got a photo booth area, which is kind of over by the door, just to the left-hand side, so go and there's a lovely exotic selfie stick, so enjoy. Have a really good night. Thank you for coming. It's been wonderful. And I shall now pass the microphone to Becca's main moderator.
To make a speech, I think it's a little unfair because I'm a terrible public speaker. So forgive me if I realize my notes a little bit much. I am here today because I've known this lovely lady for 13 years. We were actually lucky enough to be placed as freshman roommates our first year of college. And we never met each other before. That was kind of in the pre-social But anyway, I could stand up here and talk for a million years about, all of the college shenanigans that bonded us. For example, we once decided it was a good idea to take a 22-hour drive from Syracuse, New York to the Florida Keys for spring break, which ended up being a great trip. There's nothing that will bond you like being in a car with one person for 22 hours, especially driving through the Pennsylvania mountains. And she was always very tolerant in all those years, being my sort of stand-in prop for various art projects, and I called myself an art major for a few years. I'm also sort of tolerating a mess, because our room our freshman year was definitely something out of the Odd Couple. It's one of those split dorm rooms, and she, all of you probably know, is very neat and organized, and I was a disaster. And I, on the other hand, tolerated her ridiculous enthusiasm for llamas. I don't know if this is like dying off, but yeah, no, it's absolutely true. Maybe none of you noticed about her. She used to leave me voicemail, and she would like see various llama things. Like I remember once I got one when she was on vacation. She kept seeing this truck covered in llama stickers, and she was super excited. And also the fact that she, sort of kept our dorm room at about 50 degrees at all times, because as those of you from Buffalo know, people from the North Country like to be cold, and I'm not one of them. Not true. So anyway, something that I would like to point out is that through sort of all of that sort of, typical college year bonding, I had sort of probably, your stereotypical amount of boy drama, which this one was always on hand to sort of, dry my eyes and sort of like, listen calmly and be a good friend to me through that. But she never really seemed to get sucked into the same kind of drama, which I would say in retrospect is actually a reflection of her, as her dad sort of noted, her exceptionally strong sense of self. She, as I'm sure many of you know, is one of those people who is just absolutely who she is at all times, and really doesn't suffer fools lightly. And then, except for this one. It's not really Jeez. So fast forward a couple of years, she goes off on this, supposed 2-year adventure to the UK. 2 years. I'm just going to say that again. And suddenly, out of nowhere, I start hearing, about this guy that she's just met, who she seems to be really into. And I had never, seen a guy who was really into a guy, so I was, of course, intrigued. To be fair, I'm sorry I have to tell you this, John, but you were just telling that lovely story about your first date. But I have to say the postmortem from the first date was kind of like, I think it's all right. You definitely grew on her very rapidly. By the time I met you for the first time, I think it was maybe like 6 months into your relationship, she was very clearly smitten with you. Like I knew our single gal days were totally over because, I could just tell it was something special. And so I kind of had to come to terms with the fact that my best friend for the last, 7 years was probably going to permanently move across the ocean and I'd never see her on a regular basis again. Which, I'm bringing up not because I'm bitter, but because, I think the fact that we're still such good friends after all of these years is really just also a testament to the kind of person that Becca is. Because, you can sort of, I think we've all experienced in our lives, you have a really strong bond with somebody and then the circumstances under which that bond is formed sort of shift dramatically and then it's hard to maintain. And, it's easy enough to sort of vaguely keep in touch with people and maybe see them every few years, but it's not the same relationship that it always was. To kind of maintain that, you need to sort of have a certain amount of dedication to sort of regularly stay in touch and continuing being like a real witness to that person's life. And Becca has always been that support for me, even though we are an ocean apart. And I know that she's that sort of support for her students and for a lot of other people in this room as well. And I know because she's that kind of a person that she's gonna totally have this marriage thing in hand. So, finally, I'd just like to also raise a glass and say, Becca, my love, I love you. John, you asshole. I will forever hate you for taking her so far away from me, but I'm super glad that you've turned out to be so worthy of her. Cheers.
amusing, isn't it?
Oh.
Without you? Okay. Without you.